Let me go look.
Back at it again. It's another edition of the NFL Draft Bible live stream. RIC in the place to be. Breaking it down here, day 2 of the NFL Draft, and it's been an extravaganza bonanza with all of our analysts here. Of course, you can log on to NFLDraftBible.com and download that PDF. 622 scouting reports, 175 interviews, and more. Unlock the magic. Get down on it. Follow us on Twitter at NFL Draft Bible. We've got all of our latest updates there, but we're joining you here in action for the NFL Draft 2020 edition, virtuoso style. We've got about the second round down, and we are now entering round 3 territory with Logan Wilson going to the Cincinnati Bengals and up to the Jaguars now at pick 73 in round 3. So we'll be here for the home stretch. And to do it all here is my NFL Draft Bible familiar, More-Ric Serritella here, in case I didn't get you there on the intro. But let's go over to John Murphy. He's the VP of Player Personnel for the Toronto Argonauts, well-decorated CFL scout and GM. John, say hello to the people. Of course, NFL Draft Bible original familia. How are we doing today?
Excellent. I think that for no technical glitches, that I'm pretty surprised that we've gotten through 70-odd picks and no one's had IT problems yet. So obviously all those guys are secured in their place, and I think it'll be an interesting night to review what a lot of different teams have done.
Yeah, shout out to Dakota Follett for guiding us through here, and the ESPN broadcast as well, getting through without relatively ease. Russell Lande, of course, the Calgary Stampeders, longtime CFL scout with Montreal Alouettes, NFL with the Rams and the Browns, going back to XFL 1.0. And he joins us now fresh out of his CFL draft preparation meetings. How are we tonight, Russ?
I'm good, and it's sort of sad, I got to say. Everything looked bad with the original XFL. Everybody thought that it was going to go down and sort of be forgotten, but now it turns out we outlasted number 2. So, yeah. Hey, at least we finished our season. That's pretty good, right?
Well, sometimes there's some bad timing involved there, and we move right along here to Joe Everett, the director of college scouting here at NFL Draft Bible. Joe, never leaving a stone unturned. How goes it today, brother?
Oh, great. This is the best day of the draft. I think a lot of people would agree. These are the potential first rounders that make it all the way to rounds 2 and 3, marking off the top 100. Definitely my favorite day of the draft, man.
Yeah, no doubt. This is where you begin to earn your money. And Ryan Roberts, our scouting coordinator here at NFL Draft Bible, we debated that Willie Gay a little bit yesterday. I saw him come off the board, and there was no denying that one. How are we doing today, Ryan?
Oh, good, man. Just kind of sitting back and just taking a look at the depth of this class. It's absolutely crazy. Just looking at some of the players still available, guys just going off the board here in the 3rd round. Just not in awe, but it's a just really impressive class, and I'm enjoying a lot so far today.
No, it speaks to the tremendous depth of this year's draft class, and I believe we'll continue to see that right into round 4, especially with the wide receivers. I think there's going to be some talented players coming off the board where you're just like, whoa, what a great bargain that was. And David Turner can tell you a thing or two about that. Of course, Carolina Panthers, Edmonton Eskimos, his second rodeo appearance here on the NFL Draft Bible live stream, and we're happy to have him. David, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well. I can echo what Ryan just said. It's amazing the values people are getting deep into the 2nd round, and even to start off in the 3rd round. There's just talent throughout this whole class. It's very, very deep in a lot of positions.
No doubt about it. And, we are in progress here. Jacksonville Jaguars are the pick is in, and the New Orleans Saints are on the clock. And we're going to try to react live to it and get you instant impact and analysis. In the meantime, let's talk about some of the best selections that you like so far. We'll start off with Ryan Roberts. What do you got here today? Day 2 value pick that you're really digging.
I want to just start with Grant Delpit at 44. I felt like, who I think is the best safety in the class. Cleveland Browns, an extreme position of need. The value there, there is obviously tools to work with galore there. And 44 to get that type of athlete, that type of potentially a football player, that's a slam dunk pick for me.
Yeah, Cleveland is continues, despite the turnover in the front office, they continue to stockpile some of these young, talented players. Can they mesh it all together? I guess that remains to be seen here. Joe, give us a selection here that kind of stood out to you.
Jonathan Taylor, Indianapolis Colts. I think my top-rated back, but more importantly, this is that offensive line. This is the style of football they want to play. And Marlon Mack has had his issues staying healthy, and he's not the type of back you want between the tackles, 20-plus carries. You want to have his limited use so you can keep his explosion. And the value he has, I think, is sharing with another back. And if you wanted to compliment him, Jonathan Taylor, he seems to fit this offensive plan. And with Phillip Rivers coming in, I think the Colts are building a really solid offense. This is I think, great fit, great kid, and value pick.
Yeah, I love it. Best available player on the board coming into day 2 on the NFL Draft Bible Big Board. We had him at 18. I think it alleviates some of the pressure there for Phillip Rivers, too, coming into Indianapolis. John, what do you got for us here? Day 2 pick that you like.
Well, if I was selfishly saying, I'd say Darrell Taylor, but that's for other reasons. But I do think it's an excellent fit for them, right? They just kind of keep up their trend of, the Seahawks have their board and they stick to it, which, you've seen it play out very well for them on a number of occasions. And I think if I was looking at an NFL comparable, as long as he's healthy, I'm thinking like a D Ford, like as a number 3 end that you know what you're going to get out of him and what they're going to try to do with him year 1. And they're kind of going back to restocking in the areas, that have made them successful in the past, and then they come back and do it again with their, they pick an O-lineman that probably is not considered there by a lot of other teams, but, they know their value and what they're looking for. And I think a number of teams have done that. I like the back-to-back, the factor that the Dolphins smart enough, if you're going to draft a quarterback who had some injury issues, double down and take 2 offensive linemen who you may at some point try as your left and right tackle. And I agree. I think the Browns, even the Jets, for a guy who's in his first year, being the GM, but, not clearly, someone who took, their time progressing through organizations to get to that point. All 3 of those picks are guys with, exceptional ceilings, to what they bring to the Jets. It'll be interesting to see, sort of how all 3 of those guys play out, because athletically the Jets, went for the high end ceiling on the guys they've taken so far.
Yeah, Joe Douglas having a great draft, no doubt about that. And can the head coach there kind of make sense of it? That remains to be seen. Hey, Darrell Taylor, we saw Taylor down at the Senior Bowl was limited with injury. And John mentioned, us putting together our top 100. It was like, hey, obviously he's a top 100 talent, but then there's the injury issues. I saw a couple picks, Raekwon Davis, the character issues. We had him at like 101. Van Jefferson, the injury, we had him at like 103. So a couple players here still going on day 2, despite the character and injury concerns. Let's go over to David Turner. Who do you like here? Day 2 value pick.
I know you're asking for a player, but I'm loving what the Colts are doing and the Bears so far. They didn't have a first-round pick, and both those teams came into the second round maximizing what they wanted, targeting and going and getting their guys. And, as 2 teams, and then you go and look at what Washington's done too. I mean, yeah, you get Chase Young, obviously, but then they go and pick one of my favorite players in the draft. And then Memphis, was he a running back? What is he, a receiver? What is he? He's just an athlete who's going to be a difference maker when he gets the ball in his hands. So those 3 teams right now, I mean, a lot of teams are doing really well, but the top 2 for not having a first round pick, both taking the advantage of the second round talent right now, that's really impressive.
Agree. And really impressive was Davon Hamilton, Russ. We talked about him leading up to the draft. He just came off the board at 73 to Jacksonville. We mentioned his impressive performance down in Mobile, winning those one-on-ones consistently. You talk about a guy who didn't even start at Ohio State with that deep rotational defensive line there. And here he is. Jacksonville obviously needs some help on that defensive line. How do you like the selection?
I like the pick, but like I said, I think the kid's a bit of an underachiever in terms of the talent is there. This is a kid that really has first-round talent, and why wasn't he a dominant player at Ohio State? That's what we're still waiting on, to me, to see is what is it? Can they figure out what makes him tick? My guess is no, based on the history of the last 10 years of that franchise, but we'll see.
Joe, thoughts here? Saints trading up to go get their guy, Davon Hamilton.
Jacksonville taking Hamilton, I think it's a good pick. But as far as Hamilton, I agree that sometimes I think Ryan may have said it. The motor kind of runs hot and cold, but when he flashes, it's on. And I think that's what kind of caught a lot of people's attention. And it showed up at the Senior Bowl too. He had some really good one-on-ones. But yeah, you do have to question why he wasn't just 100%, why it's not on. The switch is flipped on all the time, and that's probably the reason why he falls to the third round. But the talent, it's certainly there, and I liked a lot of the reps I saw with him. It always speaks to me when you're watching some other player on the offensive line trying to get the flavor of him, and who is this Ohio State kid? So that's kind of I think that his game does speak out pretty loud. It's just can he pick up the consistency? It's going to come with a good coaching staff there.
Yeah, and hey, when it's on, I mean, he's shown he can be a pretty impressive looking player. I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but I think he could be a solid, maybe even a rotational piece, just like he was at Ohio State. Trying to keep up with the chat room here, John. What did the Saints trade up for Zach Vaughn? Is that the next selection here? That's
what it looks like. So I kind of thought, that they were still trying to improve on both sides of the line. I think, when you pay it so much attention to the stats they put up offensively in the playoffs in recent years, kind of where they've been beaten to the punch is, they haven't protected as well. They have not had a balanced attack in those playoff games. And I think their third pass rusher, the Davenport thing hasn't worked out, exactly as planned. So far they've gotten a better inside pass rush, in the last couple of years with the development of Amanyeta and Rankins. But I think this is an interesting kid. He's super productive, had a big breakout season, but he does have a medical, flag, I think, for a lot of people, Liz Frank and, a couple of things on there that would kind of raise a red flag for you. But you can't doubt the production against major competition. And if you're using him, specifically in that type of role as a third down pass rusher, in a division that now features Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, and, what Carolina will be doing, to develop a new offense. It's certainly an interesting way for a team that's not afraid to do stuff like this, where they probably gave up something of value to move up 14 or 15 picks.
Yeah, and despite the injury there, I mean, Ryan, Zach Vaughn, a guy talent-wise people felt could go in the first round. And also, while we are on Ryan Roberts, I mean, you've been tooting the Justin Matabuke train for, the whole draft process. I saw your boy just came off the board there at 71 to Baltimore. The Ravens continue to build up this defense, adding defense yesterday, adding defense in the free agent offseason. Talk about Vaughn and Matabuke.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the big plus for Vaughn early on is going to be those sub package, obvious passing down, versatility, blitzing from different spots, that type of thing. I really am curious though to see how he transitions, because I know Russ wants to keep him on the edge on a full-time basis. I feel like in that defense, off ball is going to be the designation on base downs. I feel like that eventually is going to be where he ends up landing. As far as Matabuke, I mean, we're talking Baltimore there. It's such a luxury pick at this point to just continue to add depth to that front down lineman. High upside player. He's not going to be dependent on, super early, but he could probably give you some versatility to rush on the inside on designated downs. I think it's a great fit with obviously a great organization that's going to ask him to do what he does well early on and help let him develop along the way, along that, trench with what they have Calais Campbell now and Brandon Williams. It's an embarrassment of riches up front.
No doubt. Russ, we did have this debate leading up to the draft. Zach Vaughn coming off the board here to the Saints. Tell us your thoughts there. And then also, while we were talking, Jonah Jackson, Detroit Lions trading up to get the interior offensive lineman and maybe a swing man there, versatility, ability to play guard and center.
Well, I think Vaughn, when you look at this draft, there are not a lot of outside guys, rush-wise, that are special. I think this kid's got special traits as an edge pass rusher. Knowing the Saints and their history, they have a long history of undersized guys being real productive, getting to the quarterback. He'll probably fit that mold. I think perfectly. Jackson's an intriguing guy. Goes from Rutgers to Ohio State, plays there 1 year, starts the whole season. Big, strong kid, not a top athlete, but an underrated athlete, good enough to get the job done as a starting guard. I like the kid. I just don't know if you need to go get him in the second round, but I think he's good football.
Yeah, early third. I mean, I saw Jonah
Third, yeah.
Jackson all over the board, David. I mean, I think I've seen him higher. I've seen him lower. He goes somewhere in between. Any thoughts on Jonah Jackson and Zach Vaughn?
I think they're both good picks where they're at. I mean, you could go a little lower with some of, Jackson could have gone a little lower, but I think where they're at, they're good value picks right now with where my board's sitting. So, I mean, for those teams that are filling holes, filling gaps, and they're getting these value picks in the third round. I mean, look at it. We're in the second, third round. We're getting talent that could start.
And David, I'm going to stick with you because Keyshawn Vaughn comes off the board as we're talking. The Vanderbilt running back, very high on the Blesto and National to begin the season. Didn't have quite the year that we expected. Maybe some other running backs here who we imagine could come off the board. 76, Tampa Bay continues to add to that offensive side of the ball.
I really thought maybe Zack Moss might go here, the Utah kid. He's a kid I know I've scouted, and he's really impressive as a player. Vaughn, he's a very talented runner as well, but I just didn't see the explosion and the get out that, I would like to see when I watch him run. Good, powerful when there's power and adjustability and in the hole when his shoulders are square. But once you turn his shoulders down the sideline, he really lacks the foot quickness to change direction and get back up, into a north-south runner. So I worry about that a little bit but again, Bruce Arian, and he's had production with guys like this. So
yeah, he'll figure it out, no doubt about it. Joe, we saw A.J. Dillon come off the board to the Packers. Now Keyshawn Vaughn to the Buccaneers. Not the running backs that we anticipated here in the top 100, or did we?
No, you nailed it for me. These two were not in my top 100. I like A.J. Dillon for what he is, but the value at that point, it doesn't make sense to me. Corner's like a submarine, and you're basically taking a plot. He's not a plotter. He ran well. I'm just not as enticed with him. To me, there's a few backs I'd rather have, and I'd rather wait. I think there's a pretty large drop-off after those top four guys went off, but to each his own, and Dillon to where he went seems to fit. But the Keyshawn Vaughn, there's a few backs I'd rather have there. I just don't see that he's worth the top 100 pick.
Ryan, is Keyshawn Vaughn really an upgrade over a Peyton Barber or a Ronald Jones? I'm a little bit the head scratcher here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love him in that spot. I guess I can get it from a perspective that he is a completely different runner than Ronald Jones. So maybe he meshes to different styles, varying styles. Definitely don't like it, that pick. I mean, I think it's just telling us so much now what the scare is with a guy like Zack Moss, because we talk about the injury history. I feel like that's affecting his ability to go a little earlier, because I mean, when I turn on the film, Zack Moss is a far superior player to Keyshawn Vaughn at the very least. I prefer him over A.J. Dillon too. I think that it's not even really a comparison, at least to Vaughn. So definitely an odd pick for me. I guess they're just banking on the health, I guess, in that situation.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, because Dillon also has the medical, and I think Moss is the better running back as well. John, quick take on the running backs here coming off the board. Keyshawn Vaughn to Tampa, A.J. Dillon to Green Bay.
The Green Bay one makes you wonder, are they preparing long term for what Jones might ask for financially, sort of down the road? You thought maybe him and Williams combined, would be. You have to have a high grade on Dillon to do what they just did again, kind of doubling down at a position they have some quality depth at, where you could have added another back in the draft, but taking one at that spot means that they had a significant grade on Dillon. With Vaughn, do they see him as having the hands to maybe accent Jones, as a receiver out of the backfield? His hands aren't bad. He's kind of a one-cut guy. I would have thought more of a fourth, fifth, kind of round guy in terms of what I think what he brings to you. I don't think he's a guy that's challenging for me to be your every down back. He would seem more in that role of a second tier guy, for you. But, I could see it if they really like his hands, if they think that that's something, that they anticipate using. I think that's something that they needed. They did not address it with a veteran guy. So if that's the role for him, it gets interesting. Also, the Saints gave up next year's third. So they get a late pick back, and they move up 15 spots by giving up a third, which is pretty much, the Saints have become the Bobby Beathard, use next year and then worry about getting next year. They are the king of doing that, at this stage. They'll trade next year's pick for this year's guy and then worry about next year's draft when they get to it.
All right, you're tuned in NFL Draft Bible live stream here. The next pick is in, and it's a guy, Russell, that you've been tooting here for quite some time. Michael Ojemudia from Iowa, the cornerback going to the Denver Broncos. What can you tell us about this young man?
I think he's one of the better cornerbacks after that first group that goes off. I mean, this is a good-sized kid at almost 6 feet. Got long arms, quick feet, athletic, ball skills, everything you want. The people at Iowa speak highly of this kid. They say that he comes in with all the same sort of mental makeup traits that their good DBs have had in recent years. So I feel real good that this guy's going to eventually become a starter in the league. I think it's going to take him a season to adjust. But I think he's got all the tools to be a really good player. Add in the fact he's a tough little scrappy guy. When I say little, I mean he looks wiry. It's not that he's little because he's almost 6 feet. But he'll also be a guy that could probably contribute on coverage units this year because he's willing to get out there and tackle, and he can hit. So I like this kid a lot.
And obviously the Broncos in need of a cornerback here. Ryan, your thoughts with the fit need selection? Ryan, are you with us, brother? All right, Dakota, maybe we can drop Ryan a message in the chat room there, and we'll go over to Joe. Any thoughts on the Iowa corner here going to the Broncos?
I like the fit, and I like the kid. I'm just a bit bitter. I knocked it with 101, 102, and that stings me a little bit. But I think this addresses a need that, you say adios to Chris Harris. You need someone to play that's used to playing a side and locking it down. And like Russ said, he is a scrappy kid. There's a lot of want to on that. I think it's a good fit for a defense that likes that type of player and great pedigree from a good program.
David, we saw Denver address the offensive side of the ball. Now they go defensive.
Which they need to do. And that division, when you're trying to stop the teams that are in the West, especially Kansas City, you need to load up your defense. You need to get some DBs in there. You need to get some hitters, some athletic linebackers. So I think you might see that in the next few picks for Denver is them trying to find ways to get after the quarterback and cover Kansas City's receivers.
All right, we go back over to Ryan Roberts. I know his computer froze, so we got our first technical glitch. What you got for us there, Ryan?
Ojemudia, I think some of his best film, I think, is he's a really good zone corner. He's got some really nice eye discipline. He's got the mental makeup. He's got the size, the length. And then you add in at the combine, he ran a lot faster than I thought. I thought he was going to be like a mid 4.5 guy, which would have been plenty fast enough for his length. But, he runs like 4.45, somewhere in that ballpark. So tools are all there. And, like Joe kind of mentioned a little bit, they need to reload with that cornerback position now that Chris Harris is gone. Isaac Idion, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, the kid from Boston College a couple years ago, wasn't great last year. So definitely a position of need, and he has all the traits that you would kind of bank on to develop into a very good corner.
No doubt about it. We're waiting the Atlanta Falcons' next pick. In fact, it's in Matthew Hennessy, the center from Temple, someone I had a chance to see here. John, Temple tough, somewhat limited, I thought, but still a guy that can come in, be a solid starter, probably play a decade in the league. Not going to go to Honolulu at all, but a very solid pick, I believe.
Yeah, I think this was a guy that could go to a number of teams, and you could see him being if not a day one, competition to be a starter, that it won't be too long. And then, like you said, he's a guy that can fit right in over time and be a guy this is a guy that I thought maybe the Cowboys would look at this, in this area and range. This is a good fit, for them to continue, to add, linemen to what they've been trying to do. Cause it seems like, the Falcons have been drafting it. The Falcons have been signing it. And then you get the same results when you get into the season the last couple of years. So if they want to have a little bit of a, resurrection at the end there for Matt Ryan the next couple of years, it's probably smart for them to go this way. And I think it continues to add what they want up front. Last year taking the kid from BC, and now doubling down with another kid that kind of brings some toughness and a little bit of an edge to his game. I think he'll be a kid that, this is exactly in the range where I thought, he could go, but he should be a very productive starter for a long time.
Yeah, Hennessy next to Lindstrom from Boston College. That could be a very tough Northeast connection there. Ryan, I know you've had a chance to look at the Temple kids, and Atlanta here, quietly putting together a very good draft. AJ Terrell, Marlon Davidson, and now Matt Hennessy. I believe all three of these players are going to come in and compete for a starting job right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the last two picks, you're trying to improve the trenches on both sides of the football. Matt Hennessy, there's no real nothing that stands out to him. I think he has really good balance. He's not like a perfect fit into a zone specific, power specific, but I feel like he can do a little of everything. He can be a solid contributor for a long time. He might not get a lot of publicity. He might not get a lot of notoriety, but he's just one of those guys that seems like lunch pail, day in, day out. He's going to be able to get things done for you.
NFL Draft Bible live stream coverage. We're here day 2 of the 2020 NFL Draft. And, Russ, we talked about the New York Jets quietly putting together some assets with Mount Becton, Denzel Mims in round 2, Ashton Davis in round 3. They are now on the clock. Your thoughts and impressions so far with the Jets draft and what they might do here?
Well, I will flat out say that, Joe Douglas is sort of doing what you sort of expect Joe to do. This is a scouts draft. He's looking at guys that fit the mold, both production on the field and athletic for their position. Ashton Davis, to me, is a guy that I thought was very underrated. There aren't many guys that can run with this kid. He legitimately can come down and do some man coverage on receivers in certain situations. He's a very unique safety. I think he'll also be a guy that makes a big impact on special teams. When you add in the fact that they got Becton, who, regardless of whether he was the first or second or third tackle for different people's eyes, this kid's got all the traits to be a starter. He'd be exceptionally good if he could learn to bend his knees a little bit. But there's nothing to me not to like about the Jets draft.
David, they obviously needed to protect their franchise quarterback and then add a weapon for Sam Darnold there in New York. They did that. They come back. Safety, not necessarily a need, but hey, maybe Davis, you pair him with Jamal there. Where will they go here in round number 3 with their second, third round pick?
Well, I think, they could use some pass rush off the edge. I think if there's a guy there that they like to come off the edge, that would be a thing. You could always upgrade our offensive line if there's a guy there. For me, I like what Joe's doing. Like Russ was saying, I'll echo it. Becton, great pick for them there. At that point, Mims was a fantastic value, and get the big receiver there. So, Ashton, he's a multi-threat guy. Like Russ was saying, he can do special teams. He's going to be a safety. He can even drop into the slot and play nickel. So he's a multi-position player. A lot of value there at 68 for that pick.
Yeah, and the defensive coordinator there, Joe, is going to make good use of Ashton Davis. And here they go, Jabari Zuniga from Florida, the edge rusher. And we were debating, would it be Zuniga or Jonathan Greenard? And here we go, the Florida defensive end comes off the board.
Yeah, makes sense for him, for sure.
Yeah, a lot of different pass rushers on the board for him. So basically take your flavor of ice cream there. If it was Lewis, Zuniga, Grignard, Zuniga's solid, and that's definitely what they need. I would have, I think Dave brought up, but O-line still, you can't go wrong surrounding Super Sammy with some protection. Maybe Cushenberry would have been a thought in their mind, but still, you're just yet another SEC talent coming off the board a lot later than what I thought he would. So,
David, you said it makes sense. Why do you like the pick?
Well, again, talk about the defensive coordinator there. Greg likes to get after guys. He's aggressive. He wants big time pass rushers. And look at their draft. We're talking about SEC. You go shopping down south, right? So he went and got an SEC pass rusher from Florida, athletic kid. Greg's going to know what to do with him. So it's just going to get them another level of talent there. And in their division, with Tom Brady gone, it's wide open, right? It is a wide open division. So now you got to go, how do we build to win our division? And pass rush, getting after a young quarterback in Miami. Once Tua steps in there, the Bills, their guy's only going into his third year. So you can rattle these young quarterbacks with some good pass rush and, constant hits. So that Florida kid, he's really athletic. I've watched some tape on him. I think he could be a guy in this system to really benefit from Greg Williams' tutelage.
Ryan, the Jets clearly identifying needs and addressing them.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the edge is a very important position for him. We talked about the Greenard versus Zuniga. I had a feeling Zuniga was going to come off first just because he has the more quote-unquote traits that you look for on the edge. I thought Greenard's film was better. But, at that point, you're banking on traits at this point, I think, and he has a lot of underlying potential. We saw it at the Combine, the type of athlete he is. Definitely some spots to work on, specifically a get off. I just felt like he was just slow off the snaps so often, but the traits are obviously there, and it's a position that the Jets definitely need at this point.
Well, we await the first selection for the Las Vegas Raiders here on day 2 of the draft, John. They did not have a second-round pick. They obviously took quite a bit of criticism for their selection of Damon Arnett. Of course, Henry Ruggs. We do see it now. It's another wide receiver to pair with Ruggs. It is Lynn Bowden, another guy that you had pegged and told us, hey, we need to get this kid in our top 100.
Yeah, and with them, especially with Gruden, this is a guy that you could see them do a lot of different things with. I think they'll use him, not just as a receiver. You can see him out of the backfield on special teams. The factor he can run and throw the ball. There's your gadget play. You better start preparing. For it. I think the other thing that you're seeing with the Jets is two things. One, not to harp on either giving too much credit to the new guy or too much flack to the old guy. Nice to see the Jets actually listen to their scouts now. So that's probably a good theory. Good ideas to listen to your scouts when they turn in your reports. You probably should listen to them. Probably something that might have helped in the past. And the other thing is that, for a guy, like I said, assuming that big chair that he's in, if you look, what all those guys have in common is they all have high athletic ceilings. Becton does, Mims clearly does, Ashton Davis, another one that does. And then, coming back with that pick with Zuniga, what you're looking at is, I think some of the instincts and savvy, that you want to teach him as a pass rusher to go along with the traits that he has, but he has the traits. So if you can kind of teach him the game a little bit, get him a little more refined with, how to get off the ball and how to see the play a little bit better. He now has the closing speed. He's got that frame that you like to work with. So, I would give, a lot of kudos to Joe Everett. And like I said, not to take too many shots at the pass, but I think you can see that the Jets are on a better page sort of all together. It's not so, you can kind of see there's a trend in their draft. There's a type of guy they're going after, and that's good news if you're a Jets fan.
Joe Everett is making the selections for the New York Jets now. Props to Joe Everett. I think John meant Joe Douglas there. Hey, it happens to the best of us, brother. Hey, Russ, we talked about
either way, it would be better than just letting you know.
Russ, we talked about Lynn Bowden, leading up to the draft and his, did it hurt his draft stock having to fill in as the emergency quarterback there down the stretch? John kind of made reference there. Could there be a Taysom Hill kind of role in Las Vegas for a Lynn Bowden? Your thoughts on the selection here after going Ruggs on day 1?
Oh, well, it doesn't surprise me because, you're talking about, in my opinion, a team that doesn't have a whole lot of talent. So adding depth at a position they need because they've got to score this year, because I think 3 years would be a little I don't know, the heat would start getting turned up on a guy that's getting paid over $10 million a season. So yeah, I understand this and I like it. It's a gadget guy. John is one of the most creative guys in the league. I know Dick Vermeil has always said that John Gruden is one of the 2 smartest people he's ever been around in football, and the other one was Bill Walsh. So that's pretty heady company. John's a very creative guy. He knows how to get guys open. This kid being moved around, I think would be very valuable.
Well, Russ, while you were talking, the Raiders took another wide receiver. It's Brian Edwards. So 4 selections, 3 of them going wide receiver. How smart was that?
I'm all for it. like I said, this is a team they should literally just be taking the best players, period, because they are so bad they just need bodies.
David, we talk about the big school pedigree. The Raiders continue to go down to the SEC, Kentucky, South Carolina. They continue to add wide receivers. Your thoughts here, brother?
Well, to talk about the big schools this year, the big schools are dominating even more so. There's only been, I think, 2 small school kids, the Southern Illinois guys and the Patriots pick in the second round. Was it Lenoir Rhines or something like that? Mm-hmm. But everybody else has pretty much been a big power school. I think you're going to see that trend continue in this draft because you get better information from them. You have better character, better medical reports from those trainers that you trust more. So those guys are going higher. That's why some of these guys might be a level up from where we even think they'd be. I'm surprised that the Raiders did go trade up and just go get another offensive player, a receiver at that, and going 3 or 4 picks on offense. I think it's great. Don't get me wrong. If you're David Carr, you should be excited about these players. All 3 of these players are really solid receivers. You just added some very good young talent to that receiver core. I'm excited about. I like this Edwards kid. I think he's got a great catch radius, great adjustability. He can go climb the ladder and pluck the ball at a high point with a single hand if he chooses to. And then Lynn, the kid from Kentucky, he's a jack of all trades. You can put him in slot, wildcat him. You can do so much with him. He's going to be an incredible weapon for John Gruden.
Ryan, you were dead on about Bryan Edwards, a guy that you touted for the top 100, and it was so hard to put the top 100 together. So many good players to squeeze in. Your thoughts here on the Raiders' recent selections?
Yeah, I mean, so we talk about a historic wide receiver group, obviously, depth-wise this year. I'm looking at the meshing of styles there. Obviously, we had Henry Ruggs go early. And then we have the moving chess piece of Lynn Bowden probably going into the slot. Oh, you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. It just froze on my end. So I was just talking about the meshing of styles here. Obviously, we got the speed of Henry Ruggs early. Now, then you get Lynn Bowden, who I think, it's kind of a lazy Kentucky comparison, but he reminds me a lot of Randall Cobb coming out. They did some of that wild Cobb when he was at Kentucky. I feel like it's a similar style, fits into the slot really well. Moving chess piece. And then you get Bryan Edwards, who's the big physical guy, can do some stuff after the catch. I thought, and it's not an indicator of success, but when I was watching him play, I got a little Demaryius Thomas in my mind, just the body type and how he moves, how he's smooth. I really liked how the stat popped up on the screen, 145 receptions from wide receivers last year, which was last in the NFL. Obviously, you need an overhaul at that position. You're meshing different styles. I like how they could fit together.
Yeah, definitely a mix and match type of situation. Joe, the Raiders turning this into a game of fantasy football draft here.
Yeah, and you kind of saw it brewing coming up. I think in Hard Knocks, it was Gruden's like, Mayock, find me some wide receivers that can catch out here. And it's boiled up to a point here to where it's like, let's just address this, hammer one position home, and try and improve that wide receiver room. And you really do have a lot of different types of receivers now on the roster. So I think that helps their cause. And Bowden, I mean, that's an exciting player potentially. And you're making that pick on upside. And then also on the Edwards kid, I know I'm a broken record with this, but what we do is interview kids and you talk to his teammates and it's consistent. They love Edwards. You talk to Kinlaw, you talk to Debo last year, they'll speak so highly of that kid. And to me, that's corroborating evidence on what is a good player. So it's adding up, and now the equation's kind of finished. He is a top 100 player despite the injuries or time off. What he's put on tape that's why he got picked this way.
NFL Draft Bible live stream. Ric Serritella, David Turner, John Murphy, Ryan Roberts, Russell Lande, and Joe Everett breaking it down here. We're on pick number 82. I'm about to announce we've got about 20 more picks to go here for day 2. We will be back tomorrow, Saturday, at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We'll recap day 3. We'll react to the undrafted free agents. John, the second Canadian off the board here, Chase Claypool going to the Steelers earlier. Now Neville Gallimore, the athletic defensive lineman from Oklahoma, going to the Dallas Cowboys. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I was hoping he was going to slide 7 more days until April 30th, but
Wishful thinking.
didn't quite work out for me. So back to the drawing board. But I think this is a great fit for them. To me, I probably have I'm not saying overgraded, but I think this kid, by the time he gets to his second contract, is a Chris Jones type guy. I don't think any reason to believe that he can't be a 6'8" sack inside guy. I think that more than adequately replaces some of the guys that they've tried to run in and out of that interior of their D-line and could be a huge upgrade in all reality, what they've been using. If you think about if the $1 investment that they made on, Aldon Smith works out and now taking this guy, their pass rush could, have seen a big rise there, especially, like I said, if you take into consideration what they might be getting back. Aldon Smith for less than $4 million and nothing guaranteed. Randy Gregory coming back from a suspension and now grabbing a kid like this who, like I said, I think has a lot of upside as an interior pass rusher, especially how they'll use him in that division, that they could really see a soar in their pass rush.
The athletic traits are certainly there. Russ, your thoughts on Gallimore to the Cowboys?
I think it's a good fit. I think the good thing for what they're going to ask him to do is they are not going to be worried about if he plays with good pad level, because that's one of, to me, his biggest issues. They're just worried about his athletic ability to get up the field. So I think he'll be given time to be an all-around player. I think initially he's just going to be a guy they send straight ahead and tell him to attack. That's my guess. But I think it's a good fit. He fits their sort of type of kid that they've started to bring in since Will and Lionel sort of started running the scouting department there.
David, your thoughts?
I think the kid's hand use and he's able to play square, push the pocket from the middle. He fits exactly. Echo what John and Russ are saying. He fits their system. He fits what they like. And the kid, I graded a lot of his tape, obviously getting ready for the Eskimos draft just to see what, where we might want to take him at that point. But he's really a high talent, high quality kid. Everything on the research seems like he's a really good kid too. Fits the locker room mentality of being a solid individual and a person too. So,
Ryan, your thoughts?
I mean, we're talking about traits again. I mean, at 300 plus pounds, ran what, like 4.76 at the combine. Not that the 40 really matters for a defensive lineman, but the 10-yard split is ridiculous. He's an explosive athlete, and I feel like the Dallas Cowboys are still searching for some playmakers on the interior. They drafted Tristan Hill last year. Didn't really do much in year one. Let's get another high upside guy, see what we can do potentially.
All right, the next pick is in. It's Lloyd Cushenberry, Joe, the center from LSU, going to your Denver Broncos. Instant impact and analysis. Your thoughts?
I'm loving the Broncos draft right now. We got the speed receiver in Hamler, the technician in Judy. Ojemudia addresses the need we have. And then Cushenberry, I had him as a first-round value, maybe just my mistake, but still. In the third round, I think this is tremendous value, what he is. And another guy, the LSU teammates of his, the coaches of his, he didn't get that number 18 jersey by accident. The kid's got heart, he's got technique, and he's just game clearly means a whole lot to him. I think the Broncos are lucky to get a guy like this at 83. That's good eats to me.
David, seems like
I agree with him. Sorry, I got to jump in there. This is a steal for them at this pick. This kid should have been off the board. The run on the safeties, I think, as a reaction from what the run on the tackles were early, this kid should have – I had him in the first round. I had him like late first round, like somewhere between 28 and 32, and then he slips all the way through the second, and he's sitting there. This is going to help their run game. This is going to help their pass protection. He's smart. I mean, this is a kid that's going to be their center this could be an investment for a decade right here.
Well, yeah, he could be snapping it to Drew Lock for well over a decade. Russ, we saw Cushenberry down in Mobile. Looks like they're building around Drew Lock here. They're adding a pair of receivers, now a center.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, this is also a kid that showed, I think, during his time at LSU, he can handle the system. He can handle working with different things, like getting Joe Burrow in there for the 2 years, and boom, they win a lot. Now he's going to go with the new quarterback there, young kid. So I think it's a good fit. I like the kid's talent. I think he's a better athlete than he gets credit for, which I think is going to help him really sort of be able to challenge for that starting job early in his career. I like the kid. He's a good football player.
Ryan, this seems to be a good value selection. We talked about the Temple Center, Hennessy. I thought Cushenberry was the better prospect. Very solid selection here by Denver.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a guy that could play multiple positions, potentially inside, could compete at different spots. I had him as my second center behind Ruiz. I'm a big fan. This value here at pick, 83? It's tremendous value, definitely.
John, it looks like another value pick coming off the board. Los Angeles Rams, Terrell Lewis, Alabama, LSU, Lloyd Cushenberry. The SEC continues to dominate here on day 2.
Yeah, not surprising. Denver, I think, losing on maybe on purpose, not re-signing some of their guys, probably now just upgraded, in terms of what they had at that position. And the good news is if he's not snapping to Drew Lock, he'll be snapping to Trevor Lawrence the following year. So, either way, it's a good investment, there, to get a guy who I for sure, could have seen anywhere from like Dallas. It could have been a conversation. If CeeDee Lamb isn't there and they're having a discussion about replacing Frederick, clearly a guy like that could have been in a discussion in a different phase of the draft. So, for you to just sit there and have a guy like that, play into your lap, I think, they're certainly hitting their marks in terms of what you would want to put around a young quarterback. And you're starting to see that, the different personnel departments who either have already gotten their young quarterback or are drafting one today and yesterday, they are kind of following up by giving them weapons or protecting them with the O-line or trying to increase how to create turnovers on the defensive side of the ball and put those young quarterbacks in the most enviable position possible.
No doubt about it. And, Terrell Lewis, Joe, coming off the board, another guy we saw down at the Senior Bowl here to the Rams.
I like the value. Another guy I had in the first round, but not only are they getting, I think, a good play, they are taking a chance. He's got the injury background, of course, but still, where you're drafting this guy and the need that you have. I know they got Leonard Floyd on the roster, but you need to add more names, more weapons, and see what actually fits. And at this late, it's not as big a chance they're taking.
Yeah, and you mentioned Leonard Floyd there. Ryan, that seems like a good little combination to add Terrell Lewis into the mix.
Yeah, it never really materialized for Leonard Floyd. We talk about traits, though, and he still has traits. Hopefully he's able to stay healthy, start to show a little bit of consistency to his game. I like this addition, especially for the Rams. Obviously, Dante Fowler left this offseason. They're depending right now on Leonard Floyd and Samson Ebukam, and we already spoke about this before. You can never have enough good pass rushers. So add him into the mix. Hopefully, Obo Okoronkwo from Oklahoma a couple years ago can finally stay healthy and start to get that outside pass rush for the Rams working to add, obviously, with Aaron Donald inside.
Russ, we mentioned the SEC dominance, the Power 5 dominance, Cushenberry, Terrell Lewis, and now Julian Blackmon, the safety from Utah, coming off the board, going to Indianapolis. Your thoughts?
Well, I think, David brought it up before about the big schools, and I think that the thing that hasn't been mentioned is it's big school players either A, usually get a combine invite if they're really elite guys, and even if they weren't, the rising senior day, when people go to all the big schools, almost all of them get measured. A lot of the small school kids, unless they were a kid that was on the list in the preseason, most of them haven't been measured. A lot of them have not been timed, and that's a big reason why people lean towards these big kids, especially without the combine this year. It really makes it tough for smaller school kids to get their stuff out there unless they're truly special players who got invited to all the big spots.
No doubt about it. NFL Draft Bible live stream. Rick Serritella, Ryan Roberts, David Turner, Joe Everett, John Murphy, and Russell Lande here, breaking it all down. NFL Draft Bible Familia in the building, virtuoso style, courtesy of Zoom. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, 5 p.m. Saturday. Oh, that is tomorrow. Sunday, we'll be at 10 a.m. We'll recap the whole extravaganza bonanza. We'll have Dane Vandernet and Vaughn Hutchins back at some point. I think Dave McCluen will join us. And, of course, Ron Hill. All of my NFL PA Bowl guys will be joining us throughout the next several days. We hope to have some players as well. Buffalo Bills here on the clock. John, this team is on the rise. They did not have a first-round pick. They go AJ Epinesa there with 54th overall. I thought that was good value. What might they do here with the 86th selection?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're wide open here if they want to with what they've created depth wise. Whatever they have is their best available on the board. They're more than easy pickings here for them to do that, because I thought adding an extra.
There it is, Zack Moss, the running back from Utah. We talked about it.
Great pick.
Another guy that fits their style. You don't want to ever say you can't replace what Frank Gore gives you as a veteran. But in terms of, what kind or what you were using for that style, that's certainly a more than adequate, replacement. And I think, again, you've seen a playoff caliber team that's adding to what they do well and where their strengths are. They're kind of sticking to it and doubling down. I think if I'm Malik Hooker, I'm getting a little worried there after that Blackman pick. He could be a guy that if not traded, I would doubt that they option, take the 5th year on him potentially there. And if the Rams are looking for a pass rush and they're counting on Floyd and Terrell Lewis, they should double down and take another pass rusher, because those two guys combined is not going to give you a guy.
Joe, you're out there in Indianapolis. Your thoughts on John's point with the safety position, them taking Blackman, the Hooker situation, and then Zack Moss. We saw Derrick Henry, what he did there in the playoffs. Maybe not a stellar quarterback. Zack Moss.
Just ask him how the Hooker situation was going in Indianapolis.
I can tell you about that over at the Red Garter.
I was letting it slide.
No, I'm sorry. That's not working here. You can't get that through the tunnel.
No, that was
18-wheeler wasn't fitting through that tunnel there, boy.
Well, we've got some problems out here in Indy with that, but just to address Buffalo at first, not to poo-poo the selection, but I thought I'd like their running back room. If Yeldon's still there, obviously Singletary is your feature. You do want someone to pound it between the tackles. I would have liked defensive end for the Jills there. I mean, Weaver's still on the board. You got Lynchy, Ane, whoever it is, Grignard, who we talked about as well. So, but that's their decision. Zack Moss still a solid player. In Indy, the writing is on the wall for Malik Hooker. We already had the trade rumors even before day one of the draft. Not only that, Hooker just has not. It's disappointing because that draft class, I want to say I had Malik as definitely top 10 player. I want to say 6 overall. I was banging the table harder than anybody for the guy, but he just can't get on the field and actually make it to the games. And, it's just, that's the old saying, you don't make the club in the tub. Well, I don't know who's going to make a trade for him at this point. And now the Colts, I don't think, care. So unfortunate, but it's just a sad truth there for him.
And I think you said you were banging the table for a Hooker. So Joe always keeping us abreast there with the Hooker situation in Indianapolis. Russ, he mentioned Devin Singletary had a very productive rookie season. Now they bring in Zack Moss, a little two-headed monster. Also TJ Yeldon, I think.
Yeah, it's a great pick. Singletary, I think they did a great job of, outsmarting some people last year. Not many people keep short little running backs that run in the 4.6s. Not many teams are going to put them very high on the board. They did a great job grabbing him in the 3rd last year. Maybe they back it up here. You get these 2 running backs. Could be a great combination, especially nowadays when no back gets 20 carries a game anymore. I love those 2 combined, and having Yeldon as sort of your guys who's a quality back, but both are really not suited to be a starter. That's a guy perfect. It's a great fit for them.
Ryan, your thoughts on Zack Moss to Buffalo, and then also Anthony Jennings coming off the board, the linebacker from Alabama going to New England, a guy who I thought with all the injuries might sneak into day 83, and here he is 87th to the Pats. Your thoughts?
We keep talking about meshing of styles, and I feel like Zack Moss with Devin Singletary, they're very different backs, but I feel like they can be utilized in their specific way and maybe even together sometimes. Devin Singletary is a great receiver out of the backfield. He's got potential as more of a space player. And Anthony Jennings just screams Patriot pick. It reminds me a little bit of Courtney Upshaw that came out of Alabama a few years ago. He's just kind of a grinder. He gets it done as a run stopper. I don't think that there's huge upside as a pass rusher, but he's just kind of those steady lunch pail players that Patriot front seven just tends to love.
Steady Eddie, good description there. David, I heard you say you like the Zack Moss pick. Tell us why.
Just the style. I mean, Zach's style of running, what they do on offense at the Bills. I mean, he is, to me, a tremendous tackle-to-tackle runner. He's got good run vision, good short areas quicks, makes good adjustment, but he also gets low with the center of gravity, and he's not often tackled with the first contact. So I think knowing Bean and what they're trying to do up there with Davis and some of their scouts and stuff, this is their guy. And he's quiet. I mean, I think that's some of the reason why he slid a little bit. Not only was the injuries, but some people say, he doesn't really get up. He's not really a get jack type guy. He's really a quiet introvert type kid. So, for Bean though, and those guys up there, that doesn't scare them. Their coach is going to get in their ass and he's going to get them going. So, it's a good pick, very good value for him where he's at. And then, yeah, shocker, Alabama linebacker goes to New England. Wonder how that happened. I mean, Nick picked up the phone and said, "Hey, look at my guy." So, that telephone rings and that lines ring so clear back and forth between those two programs. It's no shot.
No doubt about it. NFL Draft Bible live stream. Dakota, let's cue up that commercial. We'll hang with the Cleveland Browns selection here and see what they do. Then we'll run that promo, grab some water, make the bathroom run, grab the charger, do what we got to do here. But Cleveland Browns, another team, John, that has gone down in the Southeast. Jedrick Wills on day one, Grant Delpit on day two. Now on the clock here with their round 3 pick, obviously trying to get back to relevancy there in Cleveland. Yeah,
no, I think that they're sticking to not only big programs, guys that are productive. The film on the two, those two first kids you mentioned, are well within the range of where they selected them. Even with Delpit, probably the tape and his production is better than where he got picked. And now his inaccurate, his inconsistency at times with some of his tackling. And like I said, I think the factor that, boy, if that that kid almost seemed like he played forever before you were getting him to the point of the years where he was getting graded, right? Those first 2 years are just, outstanding and probably top 10 material. And then you're basically having that kid have to live up to being, touted as a top 10 player, right? Like right now, if you look at it in 2 years, what else can Derek Stingley do but drop from being considered the best cover guy in the NCAA and a potential, top 10 NFL draft pick? So I think, sometimes you should rely on everything that you've seen and not get kind of overindulged with any one, part of it. But I think, last year they went for Greedy Williams and got him in the second round. Now they come back and get Delpit in the second round. I think at least what is what the ceiling on those guys are. But more importantly, that the floor is not, what it could be, with some other guys. So to me, the Browns are drafting smart, which are two words that normally don't, are not in common. And are now, kind of putting together some of the things to make it be that at the end of the day, it should be less about talking about that quarterback and all the BS that they kind of talked about last year, and kind of get more back to the things of, hey, talk about how good of a guy Jarvis Landry is in the room, right? Talk about developing an offensive line in front of your guy, and then if you want to take a Peyton Manning quote out of it, tell your stupid quarterback to just shut up and play, and you might get a lot better off if you play that style of football and worry about touting what you do after you've actually done something.
Russ, Grant Delpit coming off the board at 44, tremendous value. How does that fit in with what the Browns are going to do?
Well, I think the Browns are really just trying to add talent. They just want to get talent because this is a team, I think Dorsey and those guys started doing a good job, and then that got blown up after this year. They brought in some talented players. Now you have Andrew Berry, Ryan Grigson running the scouting department with Paul DePodesta. I think the unique thing in this year's draft for them is they're going to really be focused on players that those executives have to know unbelievably well. And the reason I say that is the GM and Grigson just got there. So they're not going to have great trust or knowledge of these scouts. The head coach is new. So it's going to be the head coach DePodesta, Grigson, and Berry bring in their type of players. And Delpit, to me, seems like a perfect player that fits a lot of the things that those guys are looking for in terms of an athlete that has shown he can be coached. Even if he struggled at times this year, there still were moments of greatness. So I think people are looking at that in Cleveland saying we could get a really special player here.
David, your thoughts on Cleveland as we await the next selection?
Well, I like so far what they've done, Willis, and then, they're sitting in position to take great players. Even here, I would think, they could get another really good player, like there's plenty of good ones sitting there looking us in the face, right, guys? So, I mean, I could upgrade offensive line. You could go, get a playmaker at linebacker still, or even add another DN. And, there's guys sitting there, and this depth in this draft is amazing. So, I think, like you said, it's more organized. You see Andrew and his style coming into play, which, what I know of the guy, he's very detail oriented. He's very meticulous in what he does. My friends in Washington always said that about him, and I've had friends that work with him a little bit. So they say he's that way. So, I think it's reflecting. Just like the Jets. John, you were talking about the Jets. What you see the Jets doing is what Baltimore has done for years. And where did Joe come from? He comes from there. So he's listening to his scouts. He's letting them do their jobs. He's obviously paying attention to what the road guys are saying, because these picks are solid, good people, good character guys, and they're great picks where they're going.
Ryan, Cleveland here pushing the right button so far. Will this be the year it finally translates on the field?
That remains to be seen. I like what they're doing so far, though, with Wills and Delpit. They're letting good players fall to them, and they're not overthinking it. They're taking the best player available. And like Russ said, a team that needs to continue to add talent. It's not a great football team in several areas, specifically on the offensive line. Let talent fall to you. They were not a good team at safety last year. Let talent fall to you, and let's see what they have here. On my screen, it's flashing.
Jordan Elliott.
That's another good pick. I like it.
All right, Dave. Joe, you thought you have a comment here?
Oh, that's if I was asked what they were going to go, that would have been top on the board. Either that or one of these linebackers available, like keep Malik Harrison maybe in the state of Ohio, especially since Joe Schobert just got paid and broken off some. But Elliott, that's basically the top of my board. Give Ogunjobi and Richardson some help, and who knows if Richardson's going to go 115 miles with his daughter and a pound of weed again. So, that guy, you don't know about off-field there. So add numbers to that DL group.
All right, well, the Missouri defensive tackle, Jordan Elliott, coming off the board here. Dakota, let's cue up that promo. We'll come back. Minnesota Vikings on the clock next with the 89th selection. You're watching the NFL Draft Bible live stream coverage. Remember to tune in again tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll be on for the day 3 recap, undrafted free agent process. In the meantime, we'll be back in 2 minutes.
It's back, the official 2020 NFL Draft Bible, bringing you the names you need to know first since 2002 with insider access to players, scouts, coaches, and the entire draft industry. The 2020 NFL Draft Bible is available now both in PDF or book versions, featuring over 600 in-depth scouting reports, more than 175 player interviews, official combine and pro day measurements, plus our 2021 draft preview and mock draft. The NFL Draft Bible is the official scouting service provider of the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl and is used by all 32 NFL teams. Log on to NFLDraftBible.com and get your copy today. Back at it again. The 2020 NFL Draft Bible is now available. Nobody breaks it down like the Draft Bible. On location across the nation. We bring you exclusive access into the NFL draft world with over 600 scouting reports and nearly 200 player interviews. Real grades, projections, stats, and analysis you won't find anywhere else. Log on now and gain access to our PDF or order the hard copy. The only NFL draft book still in circulation. Used by all 32 NFL teams. We can't stop, we won't stop. NFLDraftBibles.com.
On location across the nation since 2002. It's what we do here, breaking it down, NFL Draft Bible live stream coverage. Welcome into our Zoom conversation. And we've been rocking and rolling here. We're moving and grooving here. Ryan, your guy, Cameron Dantzler, the cornerback to the Minnesota Vikings. React.
I feel like he fits the style, what they look for to a degree. Really good in zone coverage. Don't love him in man. He didn't run great at the combine, but he's in this spot. I don't hate it at all. I feel like I wasn't as big on Dantzler as some others, but he has some nice ball skills. He has some nice eyes in zone coverage. He has shown the ability to really have great eye discipline in zone. So I like it for the value here at the spot. I'm not as big on him, but in this, I have no problem with the selection.
John, corner, obviously a need here from Minnesota. They get Gladney day one. They come back with Dantzler on day two.
Oh, they still got one corner that they've drafted, so it's about my take on Dantzler's ability to play at a high level in the NFL.
All right, moving right along. David, your thoughts on Dantzler?
I can't follow that up.
That's basically what I said. He was just a little more blunt about it.
Russ, I guess Ryan was a little bit more politically correct. Well, let's move on to the next pick then. Jonathan Greenard, Houston Texans. There it is, your guy. Russ?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't say my name there, brother. No, this is a kid. I've loved this kid. I understand not everything clicks with this player in terms of does he want to continue playing? Is he going to do the work necessary to improve to make himself want to continue playing? But I think when you watch the ability on the field when he cares, he can be a dominant pass rusher. I really like this kid. I think it's a great fit.
Joe, Jonathan Greenard, discuss it.
Yeah, they definitely need some more ammunition on those stand-up pass rushers. Love Merciless, but where else it's coming from? And then were something to happen to J.J. Watt again, how you're able to apply pressure. I think it's addressing a need, but it is a reason why Greenard falls this late. Another player, the faucet's hot, then it's cold a little bit. So the consistency, obviously, they think they could coach it out of him.
Ryan, it's the Bill O'Brien show there in Houston. They go defensive line with their first two picks, Blacklock, TCU, and now Greenard from Florida. Your thoughts?
We talked about this like last week. I remember when we were on with Russ, and I echoed kind of the same thing. I really liked a lot of what Greenard does on film. I thought he was the better pass rusher for Florida this past year. If we're just talking from a technical standpoint, consistency standpoint, I like the pick at this stage. I feel like he's an undervalued football player, and when he has everything clicking for him, I think he's definitely a nice pass rusher to have with some untapped potential still there for him.
David, I think this is a great upside selection, and we talked about they haven't adequately replaced Jadeveon Clowney. Not that Greenard will do that, but he'll at least provide some pass rush there in Houston.
Absolutely. He'll come off the edge with a purpose. I mean, you got to figure they did a heart check on this kid to make sure that he was going to commit everything he needed to be successful at the next level going there to Houston. I mean, that's a hard program to go be. The coaches are very tough on players. So you got to figure they check that heart gauge, but he's special when he's on. And again, his length is really incredible, and his athleticism paired with that, he could be a weapon for sure to come off the edge and get the pressure they need there. That division is really starting to pair up with some young talent. Look through that division right now, what they're building in the last couple of years. That it's going to be really impressive, that AFC South for some years to come coming up.
All right. Well, the next pick is off the board, and this is a Ryan Roberts guy here, Devin Asiasi, the tight end from UCLA. Ryan, I'll be honest, I did not anticipate this one. However, you did, my friend.
I mean, I really like. He was a pleasant surprise to me on film. I feel like in a tight end class that is very underwhelming. I feel like he has a decent overall skill set. He's a 1-year wonder. He was a Michigan transfer. He's got some untapped potential. I felt like he was really fluid for a guy that's built as well as he is. He's a stocky build. I think that he gets in and out of his breaks really well for his size. He shows some flashes as a blocker. I really like the pick. My question is, I know Cole Kmet went to the Bears early in the second. Is that only the second tight end selected so far? If that's,
I think so.
I believe
I think
so.
so.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. It is interesting. I definitely would not have picked CIC to be the second off the board, but I'm a big fan. I like the value, and he fits that Patriot style. I think that he's going to be a valuable contributor for them this year.
Well, John, they gave up Gronk for a 4th-round pick. They come back here and trade up in the 3rd round to get their target. Asiasi, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if what they're seeing as a 1-year guy is translating to what he will then be down the road, then this turns out very well, right? Like this turns out, in the vicinity, not of how much money he's making now and that he became a Pro Bowl player, but like Austin Hooper wasn't a huge guy on draft day, leading into his draft or draft day, but how he became used, in their system and how he's developed, for the Falcons. If they're planning on giving this kid, the driver's seat to the tight end position in the new style offense that we're going to see, there's every indication that down the road, that this guy, continued improvement, what he showed as a receiver in this 1 year at UCLA last year could be a guy who has a ceiling. And that's clearly, why he's getting drafted over a number of other guys. The Greener thing, I think, Dave hit it right on the head. When you're in a division now with, Phillip Rivers, what Tennessee was able to do, offensively last year. And, depending on how things run hot and cold in Jacksonville offensively, the one thing you better do is, get to the quarterback. They have high-end guys there, and now the Texans have kind of replenished, their secondary pass rush and their rotational guys. I think that's a very, very smart move, on their behalf.
Russ, sticking with New England here, they had 4 picks today. Their first offensive pick, they go tight end. Ryan mentioned the Michigan roots there for Asiasi. They also took another Michigan player earlier that we haven't discussed yet, Josh Uche, that I know you were very high on as well.
I really like Uche. I think he's one of those guys that fits the Patriots perfectly because he's used to lining up in a variety of spots. I would expect early on he'll be a designated pass rusher, but his versatility could get him on the field a lot quicker. When I look at him, I see a very similar player to the kid they took last year in the 3rd round, Winovich. Very similar guy. I could see them pairing very well as sort of role-playing backup pass rushers that really make them a good defensive team.
NFL Draft Bible live stream coverage here. Rick Serritella, joined by the crew, John Murphy. Dakota followed, of course. I don't want to leave Dakota out. Joe Everett, Ryan Roberts, David Turner, and Russell Lande. Joe, we talked about some of the other running backs that came off the board here on day 2. Baltimore Ravens currently on the clock here at 92, but they also took a running back in J.K. Dobbins to pair with Mark Ingram. Give us your thoughts on that selection.
I like Dobbins a lot. The multiple ways he could affect the team. I think he's a more versatile player at this point than Ingram. I like Ingram, and there's no he's still a good receiving back. I think Dobbins offers you a lot more explosion. I did look at him as kind of a poor man's Ezekiel Elliott. He's not as physical as a blocker that Elliott kid was, but Dobbins is a running back, I think, that hits the ground running in that system, and that's kind of what they needed. Once Ingram was out of the lineup, they were missing that element. I think this makes them really dangerous on multiple fronts, and to get that option and keep defenses honest, you need that threat opposite Lamar. I think he mixes in well with that locker room too.
Well, more offensive ammunition on the way here, David. It is in the form of Devin Duvernay. So the slot wideout added to the collection of weapons here for Baltimore.
Oh, yeah, this guy's speed. This is Baltimore stretching the field, trying to open that underneath routes for some of the other guys. This is going to be a stretch the field, vertical threat kind of guy. And what I love about him is even in tight coverage, when DBs come, catch up to him because the ball's hanging in the air, this kid makes adjustments. His hands, he's always field aware, know where he's at on the field to get his feet in bounds. I think and again, look at what Baltimore's doing. I mean, they're breaking tradition. They haven't drafted an Alabama guy yet, so I think Ozzy's going to be mad. But I mean, they're LSU, Ohio State, Texas A&M, and Texas. I mean, these, Eric's running the draft real similar. The only thing he's missing an Alabama player. So I'm sure he's going to be getting a call from Ozzy pretty soon about, hey, got to get that Bama kid here.
Well, sit tight because they do have 2 more picks coming up here in the 3rd round, so they might take an Alabama guy. Ryan, this Duvernay pick, though, man, I'm liking this fit. This seems like it has big play potential written all over it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not like your traditional slot. He's not a super flexible guy, but he's got that vertical speed. He's that new yak guy. He's a really physical, dense build guy. I like it a lot. I know it's Joe's boy over there. He's a really nice player. He brings a vertical element, yak element. He kind of gives you a nice mix of different traits.
John, Baltimore maybe looking at what Kansas City's doing, adding some offensive ammunition, trying to keep up with the Joneses, Dobbins, now Duvernay.
Yeah, again, like we said, you're talking about a lot of teams that are having good drafts and the teams that are in the top 10, and what they're able to get. You look at a team that's, picking where the Ravens are picking and what they're going to come out of this with. It's the rich getting richer for sure in this area. And like we said, the thing you're going to keep talking about, is okay, they add Dobbins and, hey, when are they going to throw the ball? But at least, if they are, and when they do open it up, they're now giving themselves a better chance to make some bigger plays, which all that does is open up the run game even more, for a team that's going to do that. So I think he's a guy that they can make very good use of early. And that then, from a big play perspective, which is already a part of their offense, now it gives them a different kind of way to get a big play going for him, because he's a very easy guy in their offense to get matched up incorrectly for your defense or to catch, with them paying so much attention to the quarterback that he just winds up behind defenders because he easily has that type of speed.
Well, and again, he's going to open up the windows for Lamar to have bigger passing windows to throw through to the second guy through zones, because he's going to stretch that vertical. If they're playing a single high safety or even double high, he's going to make that safety make a choice quick.
Russ, Baltimore continues to impress building through the draft here. I know you were not a huge fan of J.K. Dobbins, but just talk about what they're doing, how you like it fitting in with Ingram there.
Well, it's interesting because you have Dobbins and Duvernay. And if you had asked me in December after I watched film on both of them, I would have said super tough, highly competitive, highly productive guys in major schools. I just don't know how athletic they are. Then we go to the Senior Bowl, and Duvernay, to me, that was where he made some money. Was he showed I'm not just a really quality, solid receiver. I'm actually guys got some juice to it. And I got a little more quickness in that out of my cuts. I thought he was the best receiver down in Mobile all week. So I think he helped himself a lot there. Whereas Dobbins, to me, I haven't seen anything since, just games. And that's it. So I can't classify him because I haven't seen him practice since then. I've never seen him live. I don't think he's got the juice. That's just my issue. I think he's a backup running back.
All right. So we've got all of the analysts here in the roundtable discussion. You're watching the NFL Draft Bible live stream coverage. We are up to pick number 93 here, waiting for it to come down the wire. It is the Tennessee Titans. The pick is in. It should be announced very soon, shortly here. Joe, Isaiah Wilson, Christian Fulton, again, big name pedigree, again, SEC players. Will they go back to the wishing well here with their 3rd round pick, number 93 overall? What do you think Tennessee is going to do?
Well, I think the Titans could very well just go at wide receiver. I think they need some help opposite their new star rookie from last year. I do love the MO though of what they're doing. I didn't like Vrabel's draft room. Those pictures are quality of that draft room. I mean, that I think he's really raising the bar for those other GMs clearly. But I really think you got to add some more weapons around Tannehill. You have to get some more points on the board. And I know Jonnu Smith's kind of primed as their tight end going forward, but that could be a Troutman fit here. Who knows?
That could be an interesting selection. We have only seen 2 tight ends come off the board, Ryan. Could Tennessee dip their toes there? Where do you see the Titans going with this selection?
Yeah, I mean, I could see that being a point of emphasis for him. I'm kind of going over to the other side of the ball, though, just on the defensive line. They lost Jarrell Casey this offseason. I feel like getting somebody inside to go with Simmons, at least on a snap-to-snap basis, not a full-time player, something inside maybe. And also Harold Landry had a nice little sophomore year this past year at defensive end. Maybe you add to the edge group a little bit. So defensive line would be my guess. I do like the thought of tight end if there's somebody there that they do like.
John, any thoughts here where the Titans might go?
I think even, you've seen a little run on these other pass rushers. If you have a guy that you identified, this might be a good time and good area, to go get him, considering you kind of look at some of the guys that have come off the board, here, the Florida guys, even what Dallas is going to get out of Gallimore, there. So, like, that could be another spot. For me, for them with receiver, I think there's enough left on the board that you can get at a different point. It's also amazing that we're watching the draft and it looks like Grandpa's sitting there on his sofa just calling out the picks now. He's just chill. He's given up all hope that this is going to get any action. So he's just kind of sitting on his chair now calling out the picks.
He's worn out. He's done.
Mr. Rogers is now calling out the draft for us.
Hi, neighbor.
My feed, I'm jealous because my feed went down and I'm blind to what's going on. Fill me in, fellas. What's happening here?
Looks like Darrington Evans just got picked, the running back from Appalachian State.
All right, go ahead, Ryan. React.
I guess one aspect that we didn't really talk about was Dion Lewis left this offseason. You don't want to run Derrick Henry into the ground, obviously coming off a year where it had a ton of carries. Keep him fresh a little bit. Darrington Evans adds a speed element to the backfield that they don't really have. I mean, obviously Henry's incredibly fast for his size, but more of a finesse runner. To pair with the power running style of Henry could save some tread on his tires, maybe when playoff time comes around again.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly, Russ. Your thoughts here, adding the slasher to Derrick Henry, maybe alleviating some of that workload?
Not just alleviating, but it's giving them one more running back. I mean, basically it's Derrick Henry and 4 or 5 people that are doing draft coverage. I mean, none of the guys that they have on the roster behind Derrick Henry, guys that you can say, I am comfortable throwing him the ball 7 or 8 times and giving him 7 or 8 carries every week. So this kid, perfect. He can be my number 2. He can primarily be a receiver, run some draws. Perfect. That'll work out. And that way Derrick Henry doesn't die. And I actually have a second running back on the team.
Yeah, and David, he's also a kickoff returner. This kid's he's a pretty fast, dynamic kickoff returner too.
I know who's not celebrating this pick? David Fluellen.
Yes.
Oh.
You're hilarious. But yeah, this kid is, it gives you a second running back, gives you a running back as a kickoff returner. So this is a guy who can do some return skills, catch the ball at backfield. I like him because he's shifty and he makes people miss in space. So for me, he's a solid, complementary back to what they already have.
And Joe, we saw Dion Lewis defect to the Jersey Giants, but Lewis and Henry having a lot of success there previously. As soon as I heard Evans, the same kind of formula came to mind.
A great compliment, and what Henry doesn't offer you, Evans brings to the table. The change of direction, the guys you mentioned the special teams, but also a gifted receiver. I think not only complimentary to the offense, but he opens things up for Tannehill, another dump off option, and cheaper right now than what you'd be paying Mr. Lewis.
All right, well, the Green Bay Packers are now on the clock. John, 94th overall. Has Aaron Rodgers gotten his panties out of a bunch yet?
I think they're further after the Dillon pick. So,
and here we are, a fullback / tight end, Joshua DeGuara from Cincinnati. Green Bay continues to stay offense. They added a quarterback, a running back, and now an H-back. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, this kid, he had started to make, I think this would be the first guy that I think I've seen picked that I would say if they had all the workouts and pro day, like then I would have said that this was a likelihood. So this is definitely going to go on the scouting department, for the Packers kind of, showing off on a guy that they liked. Because clearly, there's other names that have been mentioned at this position that could go. But I think you get a versatile guy, that can kind of line up at a couple of different spots and has that kind of sneaky athletic ability to do a little bit of something extra, after he catches the ball, like the third string kid that the Titans were using last year, after he goes down, just kind of had a little sneaky athletic ability, better than what you think. And then, he gets into the game and, kind of gets, into some interesting matchup, opportunities. So, probably not what Aaron Rodgers was looking for, a tight end H-back and a backup running back, but kind of giving them a little different diversity and little bit of a different look. But it'd be interesting to see again. Like I said, this would be the type of guy that I would have looked at and said, if we had all the pro day workouts and things like that, would have potentially been a pick like this to a team like the Packers, because it seems like it's a guy that the scouting department is identifying to put in a spot.
I like the Anthony Firkser comparison. I think a holy cross there. Shout out, Joe. We saw Guerra down at the Senior Bowl. Your thoughts here with the Green Bay adding another offensive piece?
Well, you got to surround Jordan Love with weapons. Ooh, I'm sorry, Aaron. Sorry. But, he offers a little bit more versatility. You could line him up, potential H-back, and where he fits in the offense. I think they need some guy with multiple applications there. Still, I'm kind of shocked. The tight end position, our boy Adam Troutman, twisting in the wind. Would have thought he'd been off the board a while ago, but that kind of tells you what the league, I guess, thinks of him.
Yeah, and David, I'm a little shocked here too, because I'm not even sure he's 6'2", maybe. I can't see him playing tight end very much here at the next level.
No, he's a Swiss Army knife. He's going to be H-back. You put him on the line a little bit. You can line him up fullback. He kind of reminds me of the guy that New England uses, to be honest with you. So, he's more that style where you're going to move him around. He's going to have to move into blocks, wham block, backside, seal off stuff. And then he'll like John, like you were saying, he's going to be deceptive on linebackers. He'll get open versus some of the slower footed guys and be able to run some routes on them and be a little more athletic than you thought he would be. I'm surprised they haven't put a receiver into play for Aaron right here. Like, I really thought, I got the first couple picks. I was like, they got to pick a receiver sooner or later. They got to get some other weapon, in that mix for him, and or even start sewing up the offensive line a little bit better. But, it is what it is at this point. And, we'll see what their scouts. I think tomorrow's draft is going to show you the separation between scouting and number of fact finders, because, without the pro days, you're going to really see who scouts deep into the draft for tomorrow.
No doubt about it. As you were talking, Ryan, our director, Dakota, chimed in. Dan Vitale replacement here for the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of fits that mold. We're talking about him as a fullback, H-back. I feel like Jace Sternberger is going to get an opportunity this year to be that inline guy. You're going to be able to use Guerra with him in some packages and try to utilize him in like kind of like David said, Swiss Army knife, different spots, different roles. I like the Guerra film decent amount. He doesn't have a ton of traits, but he's a hard-nosed kid. He really does get after it in the run game. He works his tail off. So I like it for that instance, but I mean, I really am just wondering when the wide receiver room is going to be addressed here. We talk about Devontae Adams, and then we talk about every other receiver they have is the same guy. It's all tall, back shoulder guys. At what point are we going to get some type of vertical element to this pass game so that we can open things up a little bit? I'm just curious when that is going to happen here.
Yeah, surprising.
They're waiting for Equinemius to show up.
Yeah. Well, 95 picks in. The Packers have yet to draft a wide receiver. But, Ryan, I'm going to stick with you right here for a minute, because your guy, McTelvin Agem from Arkansas, we talked to him about him in length leading up to the draft. You had him pegged as a top 100 guy, and here he is right inside 95 to the Broncos.
Yeah, he just made it. I think we had him right around that area too. I just felt like, he's got the edge background. He moved inside. He showed some versatility this year. He has traits to work with. There's rush versatility for him. You can line up him in multiple spots. You can never have enough pass rushers. And we always talk about edge when we talk about that, but the ability to move a guy on the interior to multiple spots, take advantage. I really feel like this guy has some upside to him still. I feel like he is nowhere near what he potentially could be. And at worst right now, I think he's a sub-package rusher that can rush for multiple alignments and variations.
Joe, you saw him at the East-West Shrine game. He got the call-up, I believe, to the Senior Bowl, but a guy that the Broncos can move up and down the line here.
Oh, great kid. Played his way into the top 100 is clearly what we're seeing. And I think the Broncos do have some need. It's a little tricky. I don't see him as a nose, but maybe that's where he fits. They spent money on Jarrell Casey, still got Super Gotsis out there, Aussie Rules player, and Draymond Jones. It seems like a lot of resources there on the 5 techs. So maybe they just clearly see him as the 0 there. I like the pick, though. It's definitely a player. And from both weeks out in St. Pete, he looked quality, and then it did not change the story in Mobile. So props to him. And I mean, that bottom line is Donatello's going to find a spot for him.
Yeah, and, we continue to see the quality of depth in this year's draft. Lucas Nying from TCU coming off the board here to Kansas City. John, the injury probably pushes him down the board, but when I spoke to Chase Young at the Maxwell Club, I mean, he said Lucas was the toughest opponent he faced throughout his career. Kansas City, they can be patient with Nying here with the offensive tackle.
Right. I mean, it's a tough injury for a lineman. I think it was a hip injury, torn labrum thing in his hip. So that's kind of a difficult, thing to come back to. But I think minus that, this kid's way off the board, prior to 96. So, much like the Saints, did yesterday, and we've seen other teams that are surrounding their young quarterback. One thing would be smart to do is to keep developing your tackles. And I think that's been a kind of an area that you could look at, both interior and their 3rd or 4th offensive tackle there in Kansas City have been just guys. They're not real guys. They've just been what they're getting away with, sort of at the moment. So a kid like this who has some upside physically, if he can, one, get healthy and then kind of get, working with the conditioning and kind of, increase his core and kind of decrease what the rest of us are carrying around the middle like he is. I think he has some starting potential, there down the road. But the factor that you're not having to do it anywhere in the near future, you're getting a guy, like I said, that I would have thought could have had a top 50 grade if the medical wasn't so risky.
David, it's nice to win the Super Bowl. You could take running backs in round 1, injured players on day 2. Your thoughts here?
I love the kid. Like John was saying, if this kid's injury's clean, I mean, he's athletic, he's long, he showed toughness and tenacity. He finishes blocks, he can get out in space, hit moving targets. This is a guy that I really like. And if you have the luxury that you can sit a kid, make sure they're healthy, and bring them along slow, put a little weight on him. He's a little light in the ass, but I'll put a little weight on him. I mean, geez, I mean, they're having an impressive draft. Kansas City is building on, and they're taking guys that fit their system. This is where you see a coach run draft, because every one of their players is fitting their systems, so it's not best player. It's I want this player because he fits my system.
No doubt. Kansas City doing their thing. Next pick off the board, 97th overall. We've got the Cleveland Browns selecting Jacob Phillips, the linebacker from LSU, and
another LSU player.
LSU, another SEC. We saw Ajum from Arkansas come off the board. Now, Ryan, you've been high on Phillips. We've had him around 53, 56 on our board. He comes off at 97 to Cleveland. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he's a guy that I was just wondering where the buzz was for a while, because he's been ultra productive the last couple of years for LSU. I feel like there's a little stiffness. I don't think he changes direction incredibly, but he's a really nice linear athlete. He's got some size to him, and he's got a crazy tackle radius. He just doesn't miss many tackles. I feel like he's going to be a super solid inside linebacker that maybe you don't want out there on 3rd downs, but as a 1st, 2nd down type of guy, I think that he fills a really important role for a defense.
John Phillips kind of lost in the mix there with all the talent on the defensive side of the ball at LSU.
Yeah, I think, he declared what probably ends up being an equally as beneficial move. I think if he goes back, his limitations are not going to allow him to go higher, than sort of where he goes here. I think in today's game, he's not as, probably as valued, as he would have been in prior times, because he's not covering anybody, including space, out there on a passing down. I don't want him anywhere near the field, but first and second down. And I think also it's, what you're getting, a smart, heady player who's not afraid to be physical, probably also adds value on special teams for you. But I think that, the straight line, it is completely just straight line athlete. There is no lateral ability, to this guy in terms of improving in that area. So that's kind of the holdback, for me to be overly excited. But again, what you can see is a trend with the Browns, which is, 100 plus tackles on a superb defense, on a winning team, so super productive guys on winning teams that have the game film, to match. And that seems the direction of what they're looking at, which is film and production. And if you're going to make mistakes on guys, film and production are not two bad areas to start with.
Yeah. Well, from the Browns to the Ravens, Russ, we keep on moving and grooving here. The pick is in at number 98. They also have another pick on the come around here at 106. If I am Baltimore, I am, maybe trading back, picking up picks for next year, 2 more picks in the 3rd round. But we have talked about the tremendous depth here. What might Baltimore do here?
I mean, I personally got to think they got to be looking into your offensive line. I mean, for the future, for the long term. I mean, I don't see anything there that says this is the line I'm going to have together the current starters for the long term. So they're going to have to start making plans. I think this would be a good chance to address that right here.
All right, Russ, and just, fix your camera there a little bit for us because it looks like Dan Fouts' jersey is talking to us. The ghost of Dan Fouts. Malik Harrison comes off the board. Russ, I'll stick it right there with you because you're a big fan here of the Ohio State linebacker, and Baltimore once again goes dipping into the big school.
They go into a big school at a spot where they clearly aren't going to play him over Queen, but maybe this kid is athletic enough, and I like this kid, so I think he is, to maybe eventually take that job out of LJ Fort's hands and just put him on the bench. I like this kid. I think he's a really good football player, and I think as we talked about on the podcast earlier in the year, I want to say it was August or September, we talked a lot about how much we thought this kid could help a team because even though everybody thought he was a run-first linebacker, he really is smoother and more fluid playing off the ball and coverage. We had talked about it a few times, and that's exactly where I see his ability to help this team on defense.
Joe, we saw Harrison at the Combine kind of solidify his draft stock here. Your thoughts to Baltimore?
Really like the kid, multi-sport athlete, and just comes from a pedigree program, but also this definitely addresses a need. And I forget which podcast we brought it up, but just doubling up on the same position. I think it was on the topics of quarterbacks and just improving the room in general. What were their starters before this draft began? LJ Fort, Jake Ryan, Chris Bohr. They needed to address this position on your inside linebackers. And I think Queen's clearly the guy they want out in coverage, playing a little bit more in space, whereas Harrison's a very good run defender. I think they really have done a great job improving that linebacker room.
No doubt about it. David, your thoughts?
Well, again, last year if you look at the first 3 or 4 games of the season, the Baltimore Ravens defense was terrible. Eric was rebuilding that on the fly. So you got him now addressing what he felt was kind of more patching the defense together last year and getting it to work. And now he's addressing it in this year's draft. And he's taking players that fit their system, fit what they like, tough, gritty, big school guys, good character, awesome kids off the field. So Eric's staying true except for drafting an Alabama player so far.
Well, we talked about doubling down, Ryan, as David was talking. Another offensive tackle for the New York Giants. It is Matthew Pert, the UConn offensive tackle. We go outside the power conference here. It feels like it's been forever since we had a mid-major school, but Pert, and since we did join here later in the coverage, we have not discussed Xavier McKinney, their second round selection. You're in New Jersey here along with myself. Talk about the Giants selections.
Yeah, I felt like Xavier was going to fall out of the first round just because some people don't look at him as having a dynamic trait. He's more of a mesh of just consistency, whether that is in short zones, man-to-man coverage. He has great zone awareness. He's a short tackler. There's a very consistent field for him, but I don't think that McKinney is looked at as a guy that is dynamic in any way. So consistent to the Giants defense. And then we have Matt Pert, who I've said in the past, I feel like he's kind of the forgotten guy in that, next tier of tackles. We talked about a few of those guys like Josh Joneses of the world. I feel like Matt Pert should be in that conversation just off of developmental potential. He's got the length. He's got athleticism to work with. There is obviously a lot of inconsistencies, which is why he's fallen down a little bit despite the physical talent that he has. But I feel like there is developmental potential here. Right tackle, obviously at UConn, but I think there is some versatility that he could play a couple multiple positions, and I think that he has high effort in the run game. So I think that there is a lot of potential that he could hit, and that his best football could be in front of him.
John, Andrew Thomas, Matthew Pert, are they getting ready to push Nate Soldier out the door already?
I didn't even know he was still in the door. He should be out in the doghouse, the overpaid doghouse. But I think this is a perfect kind of player, all of those years covering the draft. This is exactly the kind of guy that always goes right at the end of the third round, right? It's all of those teams who are running to try to find the last, guy who fits, with their skill set to play, offensive tackle. He is that perfect body, the sum of his parts are better than what you're getting right now. But if those parts ever all went together, you get a potential starting player, right? He was not either one or two at the Senior Bowl in wingspan, right? Like 86 something, with his wingspan, a Jamaican-born kid, right? So, there's some benefits to how long he's been playing and knowing the game, and now taking all of that natural skill and size that he has and putting him on a team that has, literally shot themselves in the foot at the offensive line. I think it's an excellent where they get him and then what the plan, to say that you potentially have a left tackle and a right tackle, body types to work in there, with what they haven't had. I think it goes a long way to redeveloping their offense and their offensive line. I think the McKinney thing is a perfect, fit. Landon Collins went kind of in that neighborhood in the second round. So I think they get another good football player. And for them defensively, which is surprising to say for the Giants who get good defensive players, would be as many of them as you can locate, in a hurry and get them on the field. So I think that's another positive for what they're doing. And again, you're seeing a more concise vision of what they're trying to do, what kind of O-line they're trying to develop, what kind of players they're trying to get. So I think you're seeing a lot of Joe Judge influence and his staff's influence early with the Giants here.
Russ, I am excited about the duo of McKinney and Jabril Peppers, but here you just spent $80 million on Nate Soldier, then you come back and use two of your first three picks on offensive tackle. I get it. It's been turnstiles. We've talked about it, but your thoughts and impressions here, trying to shore up this offensive tackle position and just the Giants as a whole.
Well, firstly, I love the pick. If you just look at Gettle, look at what he did in Carolina, look at what he started last year when he took Dexter Lawrence. And then he brings in Will Hernandez in the second round. Then they trade for Leonard Williams on the D-line again. And then they go Andrew Thomas and Nate Solder. And now this kid, this is what he did throughout his career in Carolina. O-line, D-line, O-line, D-line. That's going to be a great benefit for the team to get better quicker. And also, who are they starting at quarterback? Daniel Jones. Be nice to block for the guy who took with the 6th overall pick last year. So I think 100% the right pick. I think this team is going to make great strides this year with a new coach and Dave having a little bit more time than he's had to build that roster.
Well, he better hope so. Otherwise, that seat is going to be scorching hot. Joe, we keep it moving. The 100th overall selection, Las Vegas Raiders. They love them some Clemson players, and Tanner Muse is a guy I think, maybe played himself into this top 100 due to the combine. I think a lot of us felt like the other safety there, Kayvon Wallace, might be the better player. But here goes Muse to the Mayock and Gruden and company.
It's SEC and Clemson, not ACC. Just you, Clemson. You can come in over here. I think also they're sticking with Mayock to what's so important is character. I think Ruggs, Edwards, Muse for certain, and clearly they were watching that game. I believe it was Ohio State in the semis. Muse runs that play down from behind. I want to say at least 60 yards. He flashed his speed, but more so flashed his want to. Where he fits in as a sub linebacker or a strong safety, you find a spot for a guy that quality kid, quality athlete, and you just listen to him in interviews. That is, he's a pro already. I think he's going to bring that mindset, and that's what you're looking for. You want to just improve the building. Muse would definitely do that.
Good point. David, character, obviously a big emphasis here with the Raiders selections.
Absolutely, but you're gonna start calling the Raiders Clemson of the West. I mean, geez. I mean, they're just helping that recruiting. It's like, you want to play for the Raiders, go to Clemson. So I mean, that's just like a done deal. But no, this kid again he's played himself in the position. He's going to make immediate, I think, impact on special teams, and then grow as he gets a little thicker, a little stronger into a versatile linebacker, safety style player. Just depends on which way the coaching staff wants to take him. But I think initially he's going to just make a dynamic player on special teams with that that grit, that tough. And then, this kid could grow he really could grow into a captain with everything he brings from off the field onto the field and in the locker room as leadership and stuff.
Ryan, your thoughts, Tanner Muse?
Yeah, I mean, four-team special teamer early on. I know Joe's a big fan because I think he told me that Tanner Muse won him some money last year, if I remember correctly, at the Combine. So I know he's a big fan of him. But obviously, tested like a great athlete. I didn't love his film. I wonder what the ultimate designation of his position is, obviously on defensive downs. But at worst, we're getting a really good special team player with some athletic upside.
All right, well, the next pick is off the board here, John. We've been talking about doubling down. That seems to be a common theme. New England going with Devin Asiasi with their previous selection. They come back with the Dalton Keene, another tight end out of Virginia Tech.
He also forgot the most important thing that was the key element of that Raiders pick, which is it's very easy to text Tanner Muse. It's very easy for Gruden to just say, take Tanner Muse, and then write the card when it's a short name. So you got to get that short name text from the coach and then pick your guy. So it's very easy to have that all lined up. It's not surprising, right? That the Patriots, if they're going to double down at a position, and it's going to be one that most people wouldn't, for them to kind of go after the same type thing and start all over again, right? What has worked best for their quarterbacks, having the safety valve, using the two tight end packages. What are they going to do with whatever their new quarterback idea and scheme of it is? Probably a lot of the same. So go back to the same well. Would you want to take two guys like that in the same area of the draft? Most would say no, but again, you've seen a little bit of run that they may have, created there by taking, Devin at 91 and then a tight end fullback type guy goes at 94. And, the Jets get a little something for letting a guy that they probably were not going to take go to a divisional rival. So kind of interesting that they took two similar guys with some athletic upside at that position, but probably not guys that a lot of people would have expected to be top 100 guys.
Yeah, making a trade within the division and within their rivals. Jets and Patriots making a deal here, Russ, for Dalton Keene, who, I was not overly impressed by any one general area, but a guy that does a little bit of everything well, a player with size, can pass, can catch, can block. However, I did not anticipate him coming off the board this high.
Well, I think part of it is they're big, as we all know, and anybody that's on this chat knows football, they're big on versatility. This kid blocks well on the move. He's done in line. He can catch the ball. They can move him around. It reminds me of a number of years back. They took a tight end named, I think it was Dave Thomas out of Texas, who was sort of a jack of all trades but master of none type guy, and was productive throughout the league with them and with other teams. It makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, look at their roster. Do they have a tight end that really is going to be on the roster this year? No, so they've added two guys. They like a two tight end offense. To me, getting both those guys, to me, they're very different, but I think it makes a lot of sense.
Oh, I get it. I understand it. And yeah, I think when it's all said and done, it'll look to be the smart decision. 102, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Alex Highsmith, David, out of Charlotte, a guy I had a chance to go in and see. He's just a high motor guy, great effort, but really just didn't see any kind of pass rush technique whatsoever. I know you look at the stats and the numbers are there, but you go and watch the film, it's just a result of him being around the football, just, nonstop motor, never giving up, relentless pursuit. But hey, there's a role for a guy like this at the next level. Your thought on Highsmith going to the Steelers?
Wow, I mean, come on, you just described a Steeler linebacker right there. High motor, physical guy who's continually pursuing the ball. He might not be the best athlete, but he gets there. He's always around the ball. He's got a nose for the ball. It means he's instinctive. So, I like the pick. I like the kid. I think he's contagious with his mannerisms and his personality is magnetic. So I think he fits exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers like to bring into the locker room. I think they'll work with him. They got some time to develop him. He's not going to be pushed right into a starter role. I like the pick as far as it fits a need for him. It's good. It's good.
Definitely pristine character. Had a chance to sit down and have lunch with Alex. He's a good kid, and I wish him the best. So congratulations to him. John, I see your comment there. Only three out of 102 players were non-major conference. Incredible. And also Davion Taylor, who you mentioned could come off the board right in this area here, coming to the Eagles, a track standout.
Yeah, that's not the Davion Taylor thing was less about what I thought he was and more about the factor that he was going to get picked kind of in that neighborhood, just because you can't run like that and not have somebody, probably over, indulge a little bit, in terms of there's some upside to get him on the field one day, but if not, he's an excellent teamer, and some package guy. I think the same with Highsmith, right? They're going to have to deal with, trying to pay, Dupree and TJ Watt at a certain point. So, taking another guy that you can kind of fit, put in that lineup and put in that rotation, and a perfect, fit guy. I think the best thing that Dalton brings to the table is, are they going to put Keen on the back of the jersey or Rambo? He had like the best name, nickname there. So like you can see how they would plan to use somebody is going to out measure why other teams would probably have a guy, as sort of a mid-round pick. And, when they see him playing a larger percent of the offense than you would think, and probably also be able to use him in a variety of roles. Like when they lost the fullback last year, heck, they flipped the linebacker over to play fullback, and that was a big, issue for them offensively, more for them than anybody else. So it shows you that even without Brady in the mix, that the offense seems to going to be resembling a lot of what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, New England and Seattle notorious for having no regards for where the consensus board lies. And Joe, Davion Taylor, a guy that, really, I think played maybe 2 games in high school due to his religious beliefs. A guy I had a chance to see earlier against Oregon where he chased down CJ Verdell about, 20-yard distance and prevented him from scoring a touchdown. But your thoughts with his fit here to the Philadelphia Eagles?
They needed names at any cost at that position. If your starters are Nate Gary, Duke Riley, Jannard Avery, I don't know if it's Jatavis, they need some dudes here, and he can clearly run. There's some freakish abilities bringing to the table. How fast he acclimates to the Jim Shorts defense remains to be seen, but you're definitely addressing a need there. And then also on Highsmith, I just want to add like that. I think Dave said he's going to need a year to sort of embrace the system, learn. But I'm worried about him leveling up. I saw a really unorthodox type pass rusher with some moves that I don't know that play out at the next level. So you're definitely going to want to take him to the woodshed and see what comes out. But yeah, I'm not crazy about the Highsmith as the player, as the person though. Like you said, like really good quality individual. So that's definitely improving the building. But I don't know about what's on the field.
Yeah, he's gonna have to get his weight up, and when I saw him, he had this weird shoulder pads, shoulder issue that he had going on. Let's go over to Ryan Roberts. We're getting down to the home stretch here. Ryan, any thoughts on Highsmith, Taylor, and now Terrell Burgess here, the safety out of Utah, coming off the board to the LA Rams?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you guys kind of mentioned it a little bit about Highsmith. He kind of fits the Steeler mold. I felt like when you were describing it, Rick, about Anthony Chickalow just popped in my head. Like, I don't know why. That was just something that just popped up real quick. Davion Taylor to the Eagles, that's kind of something that they've been looking at recently. Joe mentioned Nate Jerry, kind of a hybrid player. Davion played most of his reps as an overhang player, so it's a little bit of a funky fit. We have to see kind of how he fits stylistically. But as we mentioned before, he's probably a 4-team special teamer pretty early in his career. And I must say the Terrell Burgess pick for Los Angeles, I actually really like. I thought Burgess was a good football player on film. He's going to mesh with John Johnson coming back from injury, with Taylor Rapp in his second year. I feel like they're all bring a little something different to the table, but they all have decent, well-rounded games that they could work off well of each other.
Let's go over to Russell Lande. Russ, any thoughts here on the players that recently came off the board? Highsmith, Taylor, Burgess.
The one that jumps out to me is Highsmith. And the reason it does is, and I'm sure we can all relate to this, if you look over the past 10 to 12 years, the Steelers have taken a lot of guys that people say, yeah, that's a little too high for that outside linebacker or that defensive end. And we forget that they've run the same defense for over 40 years. They're bored. They know exactly what they're looking for at these positions. And they have a knack for coaching guys to meet their college productions because they know exactly what they're looking for in guys to fit their scheme. There are so many guys, from Joey Porter, who was a 6th-round pick on up. I'll bet you this kid, because we all didn't love him, this kid will probably be a really good football player for him.
I hope it pans out for him. And as you were talking, we get a small school player, David, Adam Troutman from Dayton. It only took us from the second
That was
to
your
last.
Guy from the first podcast of the year.
Indeed, it was. It's a guy, and they have a safety coming out too, Easterling, to keep a lookout for. But here we are. It only took us the second to last pick on day 2, David, to see a FCS guy come off the board here.
Again, I really feel bad for the FCS D2, D3 kids this year because they're just not going to get the looks without the, like Russ has said through the podcast here, is like without the pro days, the confirmed measurables, without the confirmed speeds, they're just falling and falling and falling, where some workout wonders might have shot up past some guys here in the 3rd round. These guys aren't getting it. I mean, and these are some of the best work hard, try hard kids that you just love the stories behind them. So here late from 102 down, we're seeing some guys go now, and it'll be fun to see where they actually end up in their careers, because obviously there's a scout on the table right now for these guys pushing and say, hey, we need this kid. And, the Saints traded up to get this kid. So you're seeing people move up, targeting and coming to get certain guys right now.
John, Saints have never been shy to trade up for a guy that they like. They target Troutman here, the tight end. Your thoughts?
Well, 2022 is out the window because and 2021 picks are going out the door right now for some kid moving into this draft. But it's again, like I said, they're not afraid to do that. They don't mind, saying that their opinion is if there's a guy there today, they'll worry about today, and then they'll worry about 2021 by trading picks in 2022. And then just keep rolling it. And I think, with what he does well and the things that you saw him be able to translate from the small school film where it looked like he's playing against junior high guys to when he stepped up in the level of competition, for them using that guy, if you sub him in place of like Josh Hill, if you sub him in the role that they've used that second tight end just as a receiving threat, role. I mean, that is a upgrade again for a team that there's very small little places for them to upgrade, and they've done it now with the offensive line where you get a more physical guy in there, and now you move McCoy over to right guard and you pray that Andrus Peat shows up, and you have increased your offensive line protection now and for the future, here with the tight end position. They've increased just the benefits of what they already have offensively, and now you put a better player on the field, even in your sub packages. Like I said, we're just bet the over when they play the Bucs.
Yeah, right. Joe, Adam Shaheen, Dallas Goedert. We've seen some of these small school tight ends come off the board much earlier. Adam Troutman, maybe a higher rated prospect here at 105. Seems like tremendous value.
Yeah, I like the fit because New Orleans Saints, they know what to do with an overgrown FN that doesn't block. So he kind of fits that mold. He can learn plenty from Jared Cook. They're similar type player, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised in what's a bad tight end class. The tight end valuations are all over the map to me. If you'd have told me Guerra, Keene, and Asiasi are going before Troutman, I mean, it's
Right.
really hard to figure. But I think New Orleans, there's no doubt in my mind, Sean Payton, he will find uses for this guy. And he might be a year away before he makes an impact, but Troutman is a gifted receiver. He fits in. Tyree Phillips off the board. Big fan.
I was going to say, I'm going to stick with you right there because we were down in Mobile, and this was, to me, the most impressive interior offensive lineman. He was just stonewalling fools all day, all week.
I interviewed him, and I asked him, who are you looking forward the most to get in one-on-ones and show yourself? He flat out said, Javon Kinlaw. I know him. I've known him my whole life, and I've got something for him. And you watch the one-on-one reps back. He was one of the few interior O-linemen that had quality reps against his friends. So I think that's definitely something that played to his favor. And I had him listed in my top 100, and he just missed it by 5. I think Baltimore gets a quality player in there. And I forget who had brought it up just not 20 minutes ago in our pod here that they need more help on that interior. And I think here it comes in a big way.
To me, this has been one of my favorite picks so far of the draft. That is Tyree Phillips. I think he is a really special player, quite honestly. This is the last pick of the draft, so I'll get everybody's reaction to it, and then I'll get a quick parting shot, 60 seconds or less, what you guys are looking forward to or anticipating tomorrow. We're going past the midnight marker here. Tyree Phillips, David, your thoughts?
On Tyree Phillips, I think he's a, again, like you get a steal here, but Baltimore has done what Baltimore always does. They always get great players at every pick. They trust their scouts. You're starting to see scout drafts here really starting to get defined. I mean, look at this guy. I mean, this guy shouldn't be here at 106, and he's sitting there, and they don't whiff the spot. They could have traded out of it, but they didn't. They stuck in there, and they didn't whiff. They said, let's go get somebody we need who's there, and they got the right guy. So,
and it wasn't Alabama, but it was SEC, Russ, Mississippi State, Senior Bowl invite, Baltimore sticking to that big player pedigree.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember watching him after Mobile and thinking, wow, this kid is as good as I had seen down in Mobile. And the only reason I did that was because I remember Joe saying that comment about his interview, who he was excited to go against. I said, oh, man, that's a great thing to have. I got to go look at this kid because he kicked ass down in Mobile. So did well there. Then I went and watched him. Not only is Joe 100% correct on this, but this guy couldn't be a Raven more. He's thick, he's strong, very good hand use, and he plays sort of with that Raven mentality of, I just got to keep my guy tied up. No matter what I got to do, I don't care if I'm falling backwards and my helmet's off. I'm not doing anything to help myself. I'm holding on to this guy and tackling him. This guy plays with that Raven mentality. I think it's a phenomenal fit for their interior offensive line.
Ryan, the Ravens here stating a pretty strong case to have the best draft here so far through 2 days.
Absolutely. And they have a roster where they are afforded to take the best player available, which they're letting the best players fall to them. As everyone said already, Tyree Phillips has the long frame. He's incredibly powerful. He fits the Raven mentality. He fits the scheme perfectly. What I'm looking forward on the next day is I'm still waiting for Joe's boy, Jacob Eason, to come off the board. I want to see when it happens, man. These Jake Fromm, Jake Eason getting all this talk during the pre-draft process. Still waiting to see which the first Jake off the board.
Still waiting. And, John, you alluded to the Saints not having any more picks now for the rest of the draft here. They're done. So final thoughts here on Phillips and parting shot, what you're looking forward to tomorrow.
Yeah, the Phillips pick, I mean, you lose Marshall Yanda. You have bookend tackles already. You put a guy there who, probably projects better, possibly slide inside. And him and Orlando Brown together could be a dominant right side there if they, shift him into guard. So I think, again, they're picking guys that fit where they're being drafted. If anything, they're getting good value. And the other thing that they're doing is, in areas that, you would want to solidify, defensively there at linebacker, here with getting another quality, competent O-lineman that fits their mold of what they're going to do. And, like we said at the beginning, you take another running back, there's not many passes that are going to be thrown, but at least when they are, you're not going to get your quarterback in harm's way, another Mauler type guy. And I think the thing tomorrow will be, okay, so now we saw a third guy and a fourth guy at a 102 go. Will that now change in the sense of, since we've seen so many of the front end guys be the high, big caliber schools, the easy film, the guys that have all done their workouts or combine and pro day at the 6th and 7th round mark, will teams decide to draft somebody to know that they have them versus what normally would have happened, which is you might have gone after a few more of those same type guys and then, left the undrafted free agent battle to kind of battle it out for some of the smaller school or lesser known guys. Will there be some interesting picks now in the 6th and 7th round and sort of that 4th, through 7th round big school player? Will they get kind of left out of the back end of the draft if some of the scouts and some of the teams start looking at the back end to solidify guys that maybe you don't want to have that battle for them because we're not going to have rookie mini camps and we don't know when we're going to start up.
It's going to be interesting to see how that all unfolds. And I think only 13 FCS players selected last year. The way we're trending, it's going to be even fewer, Russ. And you heard Ryan talk about the quarterbacks, Jake Fromm and Jacob Eason. And what are you going to be looking forward to on day 3?
The one guy I keep looking forward to that I think if he were healthy this year and had been able to play the whole season, I think he would have challenged to be a late first-round pick, is the Bryce Hall, the corner out of Virginia. If he comes off the board tomorrow in the 4th round, that could be the best 4th-round pick. He could be better than some 3rds and 2nds if he gets back to his pre-injury status. Really good football player who has fallen tremendous.
Yeah, good one. I like the Bryce Hall. Getting him in round 4, that is going to be a tremendous value pick. David, parting shot for the people here.
Well, I want to commend the Denver Broncos marketing staff right now, because every time the commissioner comes on, they have fans behind, teams have fans behind them. Denver just said, screw that. We're not putting our fans up there. They put their cheerleaders up there. So every time the commissioner makes a pick, you just got the cheerleading squad sitting up there making, their racket. So for Denver, hey, I applaud your marketing staff. What I'm looking forward to tomorrow is, as a scout, as a guy who's 18 years in this business, I love to see when scouts define and get on tables for people. And you're going to see that tomorrow. There's going to be some small school kids get selected tomorrow over big school kids just because they're like, listen, we don't know if we're going to sign any undrafted free agents. How much money are we going to invest to go get a guy at $10,000 even when we don't know if he's ever going to show up to camp or what our camps are going to look like? So I think you're going to see some really good football decisions made tomorrow. The draft's going to get defined as it always does in this day, and we'll see some good decision making on some key players.
Time to separate the men from the boys. Day 3, Joe, it's where we earn our money, and day 2 in the books. One more day to go. Our favorite day. Get us out of here.
Well, a lot of edge rushers available of different types. I'm kind of surprised to see guys like Weaver, Lynch with the hype he's got, but clearly it was just more hype than substance. And lastly, I'm just concerned about the Chiefs, where they're going. I mean, you can do whatever you want when you're the reigning champs, but the moral compass of this locker room, when you got Tyreek Hill, Frank Clark, and now Willie Gay. All I can hope is before a playoff game, let's hope Pat Mahomes doesn't get punched in the face by somebody. I just really wonder, like, the future instead of today's present. So Chiefs, careful for what you wish for here.
All right. Well, hey, it's 2 days down of the live draft coverage. We've got one more day coming back tomorrow. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We'll see where that lands us at what part of the draft juncture. I would imagine somewhere around the 6th or 7th round. So we'll bring it home down the home stretch. We'll stay on and react to some of the undrafted free agent process. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at NFL Draft Bible, where we've tagged all these individuals, and make sure you follow every single one of them. He's John Murphy, Joe Everett, David Turner, Russell Lande, Ryan Roberts. For myself, Rick Serritella. We'll catch you again tomorrow, and it's time to dance on out of here. It's right to the bathroom.
Oh,
The bathroom boogie.
the bathroom boogie.